wish you'd understand. I just wish that God had a better plan. I'm so confused. I need a redo. Inside of me that's begging and begging and pleading. I just wanna feel free. I just wanna feel lovely. I'm surrounded by love that's in pain. Can I wipe your tears away? Please don't hurt for me. I hate that it's for me. It's for me.
Hi, welcome to the MS Michigan Man 64 podcast. Thank you to Amber K for that amazing introduction into the show. Amber K is warrior number 2. She is a singer-songwriter that wrote I Hate That It's For Me. Please check out her episode. Me and Amber have teamed up just to try to help people understand what it's like living with a chronic disease and how you have to keep on fighting the fight every day. My name is Brian. I am the MS Michigan Man 64. Before I got diagnosed 28 years ago, I was playing football at the University of Michigan, and I went from living that lifestyle to 4 years after that being diagnosed with MS, and I talk about my journey as well as the journey of other chronic disease warriors around the world, just to try to help people understand what it's like, how it affects your mental health, how it affects your family, how it affects your career. Today, I am talking with an MSer that I met online a few weeks ago, David Lyons. He is from the state of California, and he was diagnosed with his MS when he was 47 years old in 2006. The really, really cool part about this interview that I'm looking forward to is Dave is number one, he's a Marine vet, and I want to thank him for his service in our military. And the second thing is that he's a former bodybuilder. He was a professional bodybuilder. He's a professional gym owner, a professional fitness guy. He has won awards for his knowledge in the fitness industry. So I definitely invited him on just to share his journey with his multiple sclerosis diagnosis and how he fights the fights. Please welcome to the podcast, David Lyons. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good, Brian. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I appreciate you, buddy. I appreciate you. So, Dave, man, I got a ton of questions for you. I know me and you have a lot of the same mental outlook on how we need to fight our disease. I got diagnosed when I was 27. You were 47. You were huge into the fitness scene, and you were into bodybuilding. Just take me through what you were going through when you got that diagnosis in 2006 at the age of 47, and where you were in life, and what led up to that diagnosis, Dave.
Well, I was actually in the gym training. I want to correct you because I was never a pro bodybuilder. I was an amateur. I never took it to the pro level, except a bunch of my friends did. I decided to go into the gym business, but I was done pretty much with the gym business, and I was working in production and entertainment. I owned a pretty big production company. We're doing reality shows and feature films and things like that. But I was still working out. I was still training as if I was, a big bodybuilder. Yeah. I couldn't get that out of my head. Yeah. I was in the gym one day and started getting like weird pains in my left side, started getting numbness on that side. My hand was tingling, and I said, oh, no, man, I'm having a heart attack. But I kind of shrugged that off, Brian, Yeah. I said, nah, I'm not really having a heart attack. That can't be. And I ignored it. And I just kept ignoring it, and it just kept getting worse. And it got so bad after a few months of ignoring it that I couldn't feel anything from my chest down. Yeah. And I was having trouble walking, and I went to the doctor, and he said, man, we got to get you into a hospital. This is serious. Right. And they put me in a hospital. I was in a hospital for 5 days, and that's when they diagnosed me with MS. They originally thought I had either a brain tumor or brain cancer. and I was living in Florida at the time, and they brought me to the Florida Cancer Hospital. So they were ready to cut my head open to take a look at this tumor or cancer and remove it. And put a stop to it. I said, no, no, we're not doing that. So they got a neurologist into the hospital because they really didn't have neurologists because it was a cancer hospital. But luckily, there was a world famous neurologist that was doing some rounds, and he happened to be at the hospital. So they called him in, and he said, "This is not a brain tumor or a brain cancer. This guy's got a neurological problem."
Yeah.
They put me into the MRIs for 6 hours. They did the spinal tap and the blood work and all this. And on the fifth day, he said, "You've got MS."
What did you understand about when you were told MS, David? I know when I was 27 and that doctor told me I had MS, man, I had no freaking clue. But did you even know what MS was at that time?
Had no idea. Didn't know what it was. I thought, when he said MS, I was thinking muscular dystrophy. So I said, "So what's going to happen? My muscles are going to just stop working?" And he said, "No, this is a neurological condition. Your nervous system is going to stop working." And he said, "It's pretty serious because you've had it, according to what we've seen in your brain and your spine, you probably had it for about 20 years and didn't know.
Hmm.
So we give you about 6 months and you'll be in a wheelchair."
You were told that by your doctor. That blows me away, Dave. I've heard other people that were told that. And when I was 27 and that doctor told me that I had MS, if he would have told me that I was going to be in a wheelchair in 6 months or a year or 5 years, I would have been so pissed. Because, that wasn't my mindset. I was like a former football player. I was a former athlete. I just got done running a triathlon. And now you're going to tell me that I'm going to be in a wheelchair? I would have been like, hell no. How did you handle a doctor telling you that?
Well, I looked him in the face and I said to him, you might understand medicine, doc, but I said, I was a pastor and you don't understand my God. I don't believe that I'm going to be in a wheelchair. I believe that I've got the ability and my faith to fight this thing. And, I can't agree with you. He looked at me like I was crazy,
Right.
said, "Well, you better get on some medication because you're going to need it." And I said, "I'm not doing that either." So I did go to a neurologist that they referred me to because this guy was just a specialist in and out of the hospital. And the first thing the neurologist said to me is, "What medication do you want? Here's your choice, this or this."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "I choose nothing." And he thought I was nuts. And I told him, "Look, I'm going to go into the gym and I'm going to beat this thing through fitness, bodybuilding, and whatever I have to do on the physical end. But I'm not taking meds and I'm not sitting in a wheelchair."
Yeah. I love that. I love that attitude, Dave. Back when I got my diagnosis when I was 27, I was big into a gym too. I wasn't bodybuilding, but I was, big just into keeping myself in shape and everything. And when that doctor told me that I had MS, and I asked him, I'm like, "Do I got to shut it down?" And he said, "No, no, Brian." He goes, "Do everything that you're doing." He goes, "You're in great shape." He goes, "You got to keep your run going as long as you can." He goes, "Your body's going to tell you when you can't do something. Do everything that you can until it says that." And that's kind of the way that I took off when I got my diagnosis. I'm like, all right, I'm in a weight room. I'm going to stay in a weight room as long as my body's feeling good. I mean, there were periods of time in my journey, 28 years, where I had to shut it down for a little while, and just take care of my body. But I never left that exercise because my fear was if I stopped keeping my muscles fired, the firing, the stimulation of the working out and all that, I was afraid that my muscles were going to atrophy and I was going to lose the ability to walk. So that was my motivation to stay in the gym and just keep exercising.
Well, I had a similar motivation, but I wanted to go one step further. I started into the gym. Now, originally, after I got home from the hospital, I started to investigate MS and I went online and I looked at everything that was there. Remember, this is 20 years ago.
Right.
There was nothing positive. So there was no groups like the group that I have, or, it was all people whining about MS and saying their lives was over. And I started to think, well, gosh, man, this disease sucks. And I went into a little bit of a funk there for about a year where I wasn't in the gym. And even though I said to the doctor, I'm going to do it, I was almost embarrassed, Brian, because I couldn't walk right and I just didn't want people to see me. So I went from like 200 pounds of muscle to about 160 pounds of nothing.
Yeah.
And then one day I woke up, I looked in the mirror and I said, nah, that's not me. I'm getting into the gym. And I went to the gym like 5 in the morning with a hoodie on. And think about this, in Florida, it's 100 degrees all the time. And there I am with a hoodie on, going into the gym, sweating my ass off, but I didn't want anybody to see me. I started to work out. I started to feel better, I said, okay, I'm moving, I think I could push this a little further. So I found a guy that lived by me who was also a bodybuilder competitor, but he was a police officer as well. And he said, hey, why don't you come to the gym with me? I'm going to take you to my gym. And there's another guy that I train with and compete with. The name is Darren Barnes. And I think Darren will help you because he's a trainer.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, look, I've been a trainer for 25 years. I know what I'm doing. He said, yeah, but you can't get in and out of the equipment. You're like falling all over the place. You need someone with you.
Yeah.
So he brought me to the gym, started working out with him and Darren. And in a few months, I went from 160 to about 175, the muscles coming back. I looked at Darren and I said, hey, would you train me to compete as a bodybuilder again? And he said, your doctor said no, and I think you're nuts, but let's do it.
Yeah.
So I started to train, got myself up even heavier and bigger and stronger, but I was not training like I am now. I was training as a bodybuilder.
Right.
So that really wasn't helping my MS at all. It was actually making it worse.
Mm.
But I looked good. I ended up competing in the Florida State Bodybuilding Championships. I was 50 years old at the time. So I went from 47 at the diagnosis to 50 as a competitor, and won Most Inspirational Bodybuilder trophy. It was actually a really unbelievable event. Everybody was giving me a standing ovation, and it was really cool. But I had to have people help me up and down out of off of the stage. My body was shaking when I was competing.
Mm-hmm.
When I was posing. My wife, after the show, she said, Dave, this is great. You look great. Everybody's patting you on the back. She said, but it's not helping your MS. You're actually getting worse. And she said, with all your knowledge, why don't you start going back and kind of understanding what's really happening with MS so you could fix yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And she said, by the way, standing up there with your little shorts on, flexing is not helping anybody. So why don't we help other people? If you could figure this out, why don't we help other people?
I love it.
And that's where that's where the charity came in. So my wife formed the MS Fitness Challenge charity, and I went kind of back to school to understand the nervous system, the body, how it works with the nerves, what happens when you get MS and you have demyelinization. And I really started to realize that bodybuilding was not the answer. And maybe my wife is right. Standing on stage flexing is not helping me or anybody else.
Yeah.
So let me shift into figuring this out. And I spent several years, and I was tearing muscles, by the way, because I was doing everything wrong and lifting too heavy. And over the time, Brian, I started to develop what I called optimal body training. And it was different training methods that activated all of these processes, from neuroplasticity to BDNF to muscle fiber activation, acetylcholine production, brain to muscle connections, that you have to overcome the MS limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And slowly but surely, I was able to start bending my knee. I was able to start running on a treadmill. I was able to hold dumbbells that I couldn't squeeze before. And I realized that this is the answer. It's this type of training. And I shifted the whole process. And my wife and I went around the country, and we started working with gym owners and trainers and people in different cities that had MS.
Hmm.
And Darren actually was working with me with my charity, helping. Unfortunately, a few years ago, Darren passed away. It was really a big loss for all of us, but he was a huge help in getting me to work with people all over the country. And that's where the MS Fitness Challenge started to take off.
I think that's awesome, Dave. I am such a big proponent of physical fitness. When you get that diagnosis, I mean, I'm not as mobile as I was back when I was 27, first diagnosed, but I truly think that the reason that I am still as upright as I am is because of all the days that I spent in the gym, getting exercise on a treadmill or on an elliptical, just moving my legs and just keeping those muscles firing. I just think it's just so important. And I think it's awesome that, you got this program. I know when I met you and I just started like looking through your Facebook, I was just blown away. I mean, I see you shaking hands with Arnold Schwarzenegger. Lou Ferrigno's a buddy of yours, and I'm just like, man, this guy's a badass. He's got MS. I want to talk to him, and I just really appreciate everything that you're about. Talk a little bit about the book too. I know you wrote a book, and I haven't read it yet, but I'm planning on reading it. But just talk a little bit about the book too, Dave.
Well, sure. There's actually two books that I've written with two different publishers that came to me. One was, I think it was 2013, where they came to me and asked me to write my faith-based kind of journey on how I've overcome MS and my walk with God. So I did that. Well, that's called David's Goliath. Did pretty well, was in the bookstores, was in Barnes and Nobles and all that. And then a few years later, another publisher came to me and wanted me to write an exercise book for people that go to the gym that have multiple sclerosis. And that was called Everyday Health and Fitness for Multiple Sclerosis. It was actually #1 in Amazon for the category, the exercise category for a while. It did well as well. But I will say this, the big mistake we all had is that we thought just exercise was the answer, but it's not. Exercise will keep you more mobile to some extent. It will get blood flow, everything's going to work, but it's not going to reverse limitations, and it won't stop MS from making it worse for you. The training methods that I've ended up developing over these last 15 years is how you do it. And it's a difference between activating those 5 processes I mentioned and just going to the gym and throwing weights around or walking on a treadmill. Very, very different.
Yeah. So, and then I know that when I originally met you through a guy named Matt Rowe, and I know he's big into the mental part, and I know that the mental part has always been the hardest part for me. The physical part sucks with MS. Everybody goes through the physical problems of MS, but for me, it's always been the mental part. I had periods of time where I struggle with that. And I know that the optimal mind, optimal body that you and David and you and Matt put together, I think that's awesome. And I want you to talk a little bit about that program that you guys developed and just about the mental health part of our disease, Dave.
Sure. So 15 years ago, when I started to really understand how to train properly with MS to overcome limitations, I developed, like I said, optimal body training. And over the years, I've come up with about 20 to 25 different training methods. And I started to work with people one-on-one online, but it became where I couldn't help everybody because, I trained 40 people in 10 countries. So I'm working from morning to night doing that. How many more people can I help? So I created an online program, which was a membership, and we've had over 2,000 people enroll in it. Well, a few years ago, Matt Rowe started to use my Optimal Body program, and he invited me to speak at his summits, which were about mindset and fitness and health and everything to do with MS. We hit it off, and I said last year to Matt, one of the things that's missing in optimal body training is the commitment, the keeping people consistent, because I'm taking them through the workouts and we've got all this great stuff on there, but are they accountable every day? And I said, no, they're not. So I asked him, would you bring your great mindset teachings into Optimal Body?
Mhm.
So we created Optimal Body, Optimal Mind. So it's now optimalbody-optimalmind.com is the new website. We launched that a few months back, and we have a lot of people signing up and enrolling in it. But the mindset is so important because it's not about motivation. What I find, Brian, is people get motivated. They see me or they hear the program and they get, I'm going to do this. So that's a fleeting emotion.
Right.
Where they fall short is after a few weeks and they say, this is work. I got to do this. They lose the motivation.
Right.
But if they had commitment and they had that drive to stay accountable day after day, they wouldn't lose that motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So Matt comes in with his program. Now, when you go to our website and you enroll, there's the mindset part and there's the exercise part. Every day, our members get something from Matt, keeping them accountable, keeping them motivated and committed. And then we have meetings, live Zoom calls every couple of weeks where people will come on and they'll ask questions and I jump on and answer the exercise and fitness, and Matt is helping them with the mindset. But mindset is the most important part, because if you can't feel it in your mind,
Mm-hmm.
you won't feel it in your body.
Yep. Absolutely, Dave, man. I agree 1000% with both of you. You gotta, the mind is so important with our battle. I mean, you gotta have the right mindset. You gotta stay focused. You're gonna get sidetracked. You're gonna come up into barriers. You're gonna have to figure out a way to get around them. And a lot of it, and I say that the mental part of this disease has been by far harder than the physical for me. And, just getting your mind right is just so important. And the sooner you can do it, the better, on your initial diagnosis. I mean, yeah, you're going to go through the grief part of it, the depression part of it. But I mean, you gotta figure it out. You got to figure it out quick. And the quicker you do, the better off you're going to be in the long run.
Oh, I agree. And I just did a little article that I'm going to be putting out about whether you want to be a victim or whether you want to be a victor. So there's the way that you have to think when you're dealing with something like this is you have to look at moving forward. You can't constantly start thinking about, I can't do this anymore, or I miss that. Or you start grieving your old self. Well, then you become a victim. And if you're a victim, you can't have victory.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying my best to find the most powerful ways of keeping people from living in that grief of what MS does to us and getting that mental state where you start going negative instead of positive, like I did at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I got out of the hospital, man. I told that doctor, screw you, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But when I got home and I'm alone and I'm sitting in a room and I'm starting to hear about other people with MS and wheelchairs and falling apart and, crazy stories, people died because this didn't work anymore and that didn't work. And it's all because of MS. What are you going to do? You start thinking, man, this is terrible. I'm really screwed here. I got to figure this out. And it's very hard to figure it out unless you have people guiding you. And that's where Matt and I come in, because we figured it out. We've been there.
Yeah.
We know what it's like to be depressed and to live in the grief of it. And we also know what it's like to be victorious and to be victors in this.
Yeah. And what you said is so important. I think community and finding that community as early as you can is a big part of the battle, and finding people that you can relate with, people that have this disease. Because I know it took me probably 12 years until I actually physically had a friend that I knew that had MS. I mean, I didn't know anybody. And because, when I got diagnosed, the internet wasn't a big, there were no forums on the internet or anything like that. The internet wasn't around. So, if you had to physically go to a group, and I wasn't doing that at 27, 30 years old. And I think the community online, with the internet, with TikTok, with Facebook, it's just so important to find that group of people that understand what you're talking about, that can relate to you, and that you can bounce ideas off of. Hey, does this work for you? Does this work for you? And because my way of fighting my 28 years isn't going to be the same way as everybody else's. You got to customize your own way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've got a couple of groups. The one group that I've had for years that was really birthed out of the MS Fitness Challenge is MS Fit Challenge Gym. And we have over 15,000 people that have MS and even other autoimmune and chronic conditions that belong into that group. And then we just started the Optimal Body, Optimal Mind Facebook group, which is now picking up some steam. But, we have a lot of interaction. We do a monthly challenge where I'm on there showing someone, how to do an exercise, and then people follow it all during the month, and every month we change and we pick a winner. Everybody gets real excited about things like that because it's motivating.
Yeah. I know, like I said, a couple weeks ago, I started following your Facebook page, and every day I'm checking out the videos. Everybody's posting up there with the exercise. I think it's awesome. And, and to have somebody at the level that the knowledge that you have, Dave, to just be guiding you through, and you have the disease too. And I think that's important. This isn't somebody that is just trying to sell you a program that doesn't even have the disease. You have the disease, and you put in the work, and you got the results on your own. I just think it's awesome, buddy.
Well, that's why I do what I do, because I have this disease and I've got the ability, with over 45 years of fitness experience and over 20 with MS, to be able to help people, and it is very important to give people the right information. I see people on YouTube and Facebook, and, they're claiming to be experts in fitness for MS, and they don't have the disease, and they're telling people, do this, walk up the stairs and do this type of squat and do, get on the floor, and they don't realize that these people can't do that.
Right.
You got to get them there. And how are you going to get them there? Well, you've got to implement proper training methods. And all those people are doing is giving them regular standard, cookie cutter exercises from one program to the next. It's all the same exercises. If you go into Optimal Body, Optimal Mind, you're not going to see this stuff that you're seeing on YouTube.
Oh, no.
It's very, very different. So, I like doing what I do. I've had the ability to get the knowledge, unfortunately, because I have it. I have the disease.
Right.
But more importantly, I've studied and I understand. I have a degree in nutrition. I have a doctorate of advanced studies in health sciences. These are things that I live. And anytime I see something new that's coming out, I dive into it. And I talk to neuroscientists. I work with doctors. There's 100 doctors throughout the United States that use optimal body training instead of physical therapy with their patients that not only have MS, but have other chronic conditions. And they're doing it through insurance because the doctor is actually prescribing it. And I asked the doctors, why Optimal Body? Why, not some other program? And they told me that for 2 years, they watched other programs and they watched Optimal Body. And they tried Optimal Body with the patients, and they were getting better results with Optimal Body than anything else, including physical therapy. And I'm not saying that I'm the smartest guy out there or, bragging about my great abilities, because if you ask me, I don't know anything. God's the one that gives me the ability to understand this and the knowledge that I have.
Mhm.
And the glory goes to him, not to me.
Yeah, I just love it, Dave. Everything that you're about. When I first met you through Matt, and I started scrolling and started reading about you and just doing my research. I'm just like, man, this guy's a badass. I love everything that you're about, and I really appreciate you spending the time just to come on and share your journey with me. I'm going to put everything in the podcast description if you want to follow Dave. and join his fitness challenge. I mean, I think I'm going to be probably doing it because anything that you can do to help you stay as mobile as you can, I'm all for it. And I just appreciate everything you're about, Dave. Is there anything that you want to say to anybody out there that's like maybe new in this disease and they're scared, and if they're the mental part of it, what would your message be to them that life isn't over? You can still live a hell of a damn good life with MS if you just have the right attitude.
Well, it's not just attitude, it's commitment to being able to beat this disease. And you have to have the tools to do that. That's where Optimal Body, Optimal Mind comes in. We give you the tools. And if you don't want to join a program specifically and you just want to follow a good group of people that are positive and learn, then join the Facebook group, the MS Fit Challenge Gym Facebook group, just to be with other people that know about how to train right and are working with us. It's very important that you get the right information, because I've seen so many people when they get the diagnosis and they go and they start following all these other people that don't have MS, and they do their programs, and then 2 years later they're coming to me going, why am I worse? I followed X, Y, and Z, and that guy told me that he's an expert. Well, if you follow the wrong program, you're basically wasting your time, and you're giving MS more leeway to give you more limitations. So nip it in the bud at the beginning, jump into a good program, get in with good people in a group, stay committed, not just motivated, but stay committed to beating this disease, and you can do it. There's no reason. And I always tell people, never quit. You don't quit. There's going to be setbacks. There's going to be tough times. If you're looking for something easy, well, this is not it. This is not an easy disease. It's not an easy way of fighting it, but we give you the tools to be able to do that.
I love it, man. You got to have tools. I've had tools in my lifetime of 28 years doing this disease that worked really good for me. And, I had to tweak them and adjust them. And I just love it, Dave. I really appreciate you for coming on. And I know we're going to be doing a lot of things together. We've had multiple conversations already. And I think we got a friendship developing here that's going to be a long-lasting friendship. And I really appreciate you for coming on, my friend.
Well, I appreciate you for having me, and we will be working with you and your partners. You've got a great podcast. You're a guy that has a lot of ability. You're very motivational for people, and people need to hear you out there. And we're going to help make sure that a lot of people hear what you've got to say.
I appreciate you, Dave. I appreciate you. All right, I'm going to put everything about Dave Lyons in the podcast description. Please check him out, man. This guy's awesome. He's a badass, and he makes a lot of sense with everything that he has to say about just staying as active and as mobile as you can. He's got everything going on, man. I really thank you, Dave. I'm going to wrap it up. If you want to follow me on TikTok, you can find me MS Michigan Man 64. You can also find me on Instagram, MS Michigan Man 64, and I'm on Facebook, Brian Wallace out of Brunswick, Ohio. Share it out. We want to be understood. The best way to be understood is to listen to us talk. Till the next episode, this is the MS Michigan Man 64. I am out.